Welcome back to my channel. I'm Colton, and today we're answering the question, what is a Digicam? So you may have seen this trending on YouTube and other photography YouTube accounts talking about Digicams and reviewing Digicams, and you might be wondering, well, what exactly is a Digicam and why should I care? And that's what we're answering today. So at its core, a Digicam is just a digital camera. That's basically it. Wrap the video. In reality, if we're talking about in relation to the trend itself, what is a Digicam? Then there are a couple elements that make up a Digicam. So let's get started. So the first and probably most important element of a Digicam would be what type of sensor it has, and that would be a CCD sensor. So a CCD sensor is sort of the predecessor to a CMOS sensor. CMOS sensors are what are used in cameras today, so like your Sony or your Canon mirrorless cameras, these are all using CMOS sensors. And by all accounts, they are better than CCD sensors in terms of resolution and ISO and autofocusing and all of the different elements. They are just, stats-wise, they're better. But there is sort of an element that makes CCD sensors more romanticized by photographers, and that is the idea that a CCD sensor has more of a film-like quality to it. And before you say, well, that's dumb, and maybe to some extent it is, it does seem to be somewhat true. When you think about CCD sensors and the time frame that they came out, they sort of appeared in the era of transitioning from film to digital. And those early digital cameras were not really better than film cameras. Definitely not from a professional standpoint. Professionals were still absolutely shooting film because it was better. And digital cameras hadn't really surpassed film yet in terms of their image quality and performance and everything like that. So it kind of makes sense, the idea that early digital cameras might try to mimic the way that film cameras look to convince people to transition over, or at the very least so that when people did transition over, they had a similar looking picture when they used a digital picture, or a digital camera, I should say. So the idea is that there is a film-like quality to these early sensors, and that really that encapsulates itself in the color science. It's also no surprise that, for example, some CCD sensors are made by Kodak. Kodak has pretty good color science, and so you would imagine that the sensors they create would utilize that color science. On the flip side, CMOS sensors that are used today, a lot of those are made by Sony, and Sony is usually mocked for not having very good color science. That's the biggest element of a Digicam, is the CCD sensor, that it produces a more film-like quality, and that is the most sought-out aspect of a Digicam. CCD sensors typically, at least as far as the trend goes, you're going to find them being anywhere from 1 megapixel all the way up to maybe around 12 megapixels. And really the sweet spot as far as which cameras are being talked about most are going to fall between 4 and say 8 megapixels. If you find a camera that has less megapixels or more megapixels, it absolutely is still a Digicam. But as far as like the trendy cameras are typically like 4, 6, 8 megapixels, somewhere right around in that area. Now, one nice thing about Digicams is they haven't really been identified as a massive trend yet, and so by that standpoint, the price of Digicams remains fairly low. And in fact, most people view these Digicams as being basically worthless. So you can absolutely find these super cheap at garage sales or estate sales, or even, online, like, I guess Depop, you're probably gonna pay a bit more, but in various websites online, you may still find them pretty cheap. Definitely under $100, even if you're getting like a DSLR or some kind of interchangeable lens camera. they still remain super cheap. So it's a great time to pick one up if you're interested in messing around with Digicams. Now, I myself do have a few Digicams and I have enjoyed shooting them. I think there's definitely enough resolution out of an 8 megapixel or something around that range that you can absolutely still make prints. You can include them in various different mediums online, and even if you wanted to add them into a photo book that you're working on, you could absolutely do so. So they are still very practically useful, and they're fun to shoot. I would definitely say it's a low cost to get into shooting a Digicam. You probably can even find one at your parents' house in storage. So it's worth playing around with if it seems interesting to you. And if you guys are interested in Digicams, give me a thumbs up, let me know, and I can create some additional videos about some of my Digicams. And otherwise, in the comments, let me know what Digicam you are using or which one you're interested in, because like anything, they are not all the same and some are definitely better than others. So I would love to know what you guys are using so that I can sink my teeth into a little research on those and start the conversation about Digicams. And is this a dumb YouTube trend or is there some merit to it? Let me know. Otherwise, as always, I'm Colton. I'll see you in the next one.